Welcome back to an all new episode of the All Immigrant Podcast. I'm your host, Abin. I'm once again joined by my co host, Vivek. How are things, my friend?
Things are good. It's 9:30, which is, if you know me well enough, 30 minutes past my bedtime.
hmm
So fun times. But I'm excited to be here, feeling very energized. It's been a slow January, right?
Yeah, I mean, it has felt like the longest January. This month has been extraordinarily long. I am currently in India, so I probably the cold isn't playing much of a factor here than compared to where the rest of you guys are. Because I've heard a lot of complaints. I've had a lot of friends who've been visiting and who have pushed their flights by a few weeks because it's just way too cold and they're productive from here anyway. But still, it feels like this month has rumbled on for for quite some time.
And there's been an ice storm in the US, and obviously our guest Shreya, who I'm going to introduce in a second, lives here as well. But the ice storm is following me everywhere. I was in Chicago, it was there. I went to Portland, it was there. I came to Atlanta, it was here. I've been traveling and the whole month, and the ice storm has been following me. So there's a running joke everywhere that I'm the bringer of bad weather. Hopefully that changes in February. Without further ado, so I would like to introduce our guest for today, Shreya Mehta. So Shreya was born and spent most of her childhood in India. She holds numerous degrees in India: a bachelor in commerce from the University of Mumbai, a PCC chartered accountant, and a qualified company secretary. However, she has always had a keen interest in teaching and helping people, which is reflective in her journey over the last few years in particular. She moved to Seattle in the US in the not so recent past and has since held many roles and worn many hats. As a recruiter representing some of the largest and most famous tech companies out there: Uber, Amazon, Microsoft, TikTok, as well as a coach with a focus on immigrants in the US. She strives to help people in every aspect of her life and has been through quite an immigration journey herself. Shreya, welcome you to the podcast. Looking at your t shirt, I know you're a delight.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivek. And I really want to say, please do not come to Seattle until May because we definitely do not want an ice storm. So stay where you are. I'll come and see you there. But thank you so much. Everything that you were saying, I think I was smiling, I was nodding when you were introducing me because I was like, oh, this is really me. This is really my journey. Has been all greats, of course, all ups and downs all together. But I'm very excited to be here to speak to you guys about all of this and let's curate this.
Awesome.
So I guess there's only one place to start here. Let's go right at the beginning. You grew up in Mumbai now. So talk us through some of your experiences growing up in the city. Which part of the city you grew up in? What were some of the things you've enjoyed about growing up in Bombay? Bombay can be a lot for a lot because it's a very fast paced environment. I've called it New York on steroids many times. So what was it like growing up in Mumbai?
Right, so I'll correct you a little bit. So I've actually
Mm-hmm.
born and brought up in Rajasthan in Chittorgarh, but
Mm-hmm.
then in the second half of my India phase, I have lived in Mumbai. So on and off 10 years, I was in Mumbai for my CA, CS, BCom, and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it really did feel like that I was actually growing up there because when I came to Mumbai, I was this, protected little girl probably who were like, been brought up by overpossessive parents, comes from a society where usually girls are not sent out, especially to a different state for education, and
Mm-hmm.
especially not kept in a PG. I was in a PG. I was not staying with the relatives, and I think that was like a big thing for my dad at that time. So I think it was definitely a lot of things, and especially coming from a small town to a bigger city like this where things were fast moving, like you just said. And more than that, I think there were so many things, you guys, that I didn't even know. A lot of things about education, a lot of things about just transportation system, a lot of things about education system, basic social etiquettes that was very much okay. Back in Rajasthan or within
Yeah.
my family was not okay in Mumbai. And you guys have been brought up there, so you would know how an outsider. I was an immigrant in India itself. Now I feel like, but yeah, that's how I felt when I went to Mumbai because they were like, I've had crazy, ugly fights with my friends, like people who are my friends now, because I was so adamant thinking that, oh, this is what I know and this is what is right. How can you guys have a different perspective than what I have, right? As simple as like, I'm just going to say it out loud, as simple as like talking to boys at night. I was like, you should not be doing it. This is a time, you should study. Don't do it. Your parents have sent you out like this. And I was judgy, like I was saying right before we started recording, that I was judgy like that because I was given those norms and those analysis, from my family, from the society I've been in. And so I think it was an eye opener being in Mumbai in terms of social etiquettes, in terms of my education, in terms of who I am right now. So I think stepping out, people ask me, how was it stepping out? And I was like, it was everything for me because I forgot who I was. I forgot who I wanted to be. I forgot what the world was because there was a whole new definition of all three of these things.
Right.
Something I don't share. Sorry, Abin, to cut
Go
you
on,
off.
Vivek. No.
Something I don't share. I mean, and maybe I have shared it, but not on this podcast for sure. Is so I grew up in Bangalore, and I moved to Mumbai for a couple of years to study to do my high school. And you would think, hey, Bangalore and Mumbai, both big cities, not a big deal, right? But I realized very quickly there is Bangalore, there is Mumbai, and then there is South Bombay, and these are three different worlds. And the Bangalore to Mumbai transition maybe not as bad. The Bangalore to Mumbai in South Bombay transition was an interesting one for me because I think similar to you, there were a few things that I wasn't used to. There were a few things that I was not exposed to, and there was a bit of a learning curve for me.
For
And
sure.
I didn't expect. I think what puzzled me, I think, in life when you expect it, it's easy. I don't know if you expected it moving from a smaller city to a bigger city, but for me, I didn't expect it, and it hit me like an avalanche, and I was like, oh, okay, this is something I gotta learn and discover. So it's interesting that you felt that way because I felt that way too, and mine was I was not even, I was from a what one would call a bigger city. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
I agree. I concur. I feel the same way.
And I totally get it because I was very reluctant about like moving out and not studying there for multiple reasons. And at that time, I didn't realize that was just my idea of like being someone bigger than what the society had to offer. And my dad always say that you were someone who would want to go, like, you always say that if you are asked to do A, I would definitely look at B and then do that, even if it's hurting me. So in the very beginning, he said that, oh, you would get to go out, but then to this specific place, to this. And once I visited Mumbai after my 10th, somehow this girl from a very small town started dreaming of this place because everything looked and felt like freedom for me. I come from a family with like three siblings, both the grandparents, both my parents, and I really want to say it out loud. Education was the most important thing in our family. You would miss everything for your education, for your exams, for everything, but then there was nothing else that we get to do. Right. So as soon as I stepped in Mumbai, I was like, listen, I'm getting to do everything here. No one's questioning. There's a happy cousin. They're like kids and I get to play. There's nobody questioning me. This is the life I really want. But nobody was expecting what I didn't expect what to expect, honestly. I didn't know what to expect. So I think the avalanche would be the right word. I'm definitely going to use that in my story next.
Makes
It
sense.
can be, yeah, can be super overwhelming, especially when you come no, come from a town where things are a lot more quieter and a lot more contained. Mumbai is so much all at once, right? Like I had that experience, and even for Vivek, like jumping on Vivek's point is moving from Bangalore to Bombay itself is a bit of a whiplash because of the way Bangalore operates. Bangalore is a little more laid back, a little more lackadaisical. The people are are in no great hurry. I think now that's changing given the influx uh, of the IT sector as well as the numerous startups that have come up in the last couple of years. I feel uh, that style of working is changing, but Bombay for so long has been on the go. You're always moving. Things are always happening. If you don't move with the current, you risk getting swept away.
Mhm.
So it can be kind of overwhelming to a certain degree, but I think once you really get into the thick of it, it can be quite a rewarding experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would never at all disagree. I've got the best of friends from Mumbai. I've got the best of opportunities. I've got the best of experiences, like I said, ugly fights, but then also the greatest of experiences in terms of social etiquettes, in terms of how do you build a life out of something. So I didn't clear my CA. But then every struggle that I had with every attempt, I knew that I was getting power from people I was meeting, people I was, exposed with in terms of social conversations, in terms of professional conversations. And I don't think any other city, again, I haven't lived in any other city, but I don't think any other city in India would have given me that experience that Bombay has given. And I think it's very welcoming in terms of it has space for all kinds of people. Because again, if I come from such a place where I have this idea that I want to be someone bigger, I want to learn and then give back to the community, I had that from the very beginning. I just didn't know how. So I think Bombay kind of welcomed me in a sense where it has space for me. I started doing that from my hostel, where I started having conversations about things that I thought was great at, right? So it's definitely that space for everybody, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, you said something interesting, right? So you didn't just move from a smaller city to Mumbai. You moved from a smaller city to Mumbai, and then you took on what is arguably the hardest combination of courses in the commerce world, right? You took on chartered accountancy and company secretary together.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting. I mean, that's like a lot of whiplash and compounded with a lot of whiplash on the course, right? So what was the motivation that led you down the path of choosing to? I mean, I know you mentioned you didn't finish your CA, and I'd love to talk to you about that. But what was the motivation that led you down the path of CA, CS, and and I guess talk us through your journey there and what happened.
Absolutely. So if I would say that my it was CA was my dad's dream and I took it, it would be absolutely 100% true. But the other thing was also everybody in our family wanted us daughters. So I have an elder sister, us daughters to be like science graduates and like do something like doctor and engineer and all. And like I said, if somebody gives me a plan A, I'll definitely find a plan B. And I found mine, and I was like, oh, commerce it is, and I'm going to do what my pa couldn't do it for multiple reasons, family, health. He had to come back. So I was like, oh, I'll do this. But then I think from the very beginning, I probably wasn't interested in it. And my sister kept on telling me that. But then I was like, oh, I've picked this up and I'm going to do it. And I did clear one of the attempts, right? So for me, picking it up was definitely one, education is the only reason that my family would actually allow me to step out, have a different life and all of that. And by no means I'm saying that, oh, they were those people who didn't enjoy life. They loved life, they enjoy life. But was the most important thing. That was the only, like, your ticket to freedom kind of. So I knew that I need to take something bigger, to create that bigger impact for family and for myself. That was first. Second was definitely, it was dad's dream, and I was like, oh, I can probably do it, because I wanted to be that son, because I was second daughter in the family, and I was like, oh, I want to be that son. So I want to do it and take it and change lives, my life and everybody else's life as well. But yeah, I think it was definitely that. I don't think I can pinpoint on any other reasons. And it didn't work out for multiple reasons. I wouldn't have been sitting here. You guys have gone through CA, so you would know I wouldn't probably have been sitting here. I wouldn't have left my career and everything if I had that back in India to just come here and like restart everything. But yeah, I think it wasn't such a bad decision now.
I mean, it never is in hindsight, right? It always because we make it work out in the end, and that's the beauty of journeys in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I always say it's not the education, it's actually the exposure that we allow within ourselves, right? So maybe all of us have degrees, maybe we've been brought up in a similar environment, but what exposure we allow within ourselves actually create who we are. So even if someone has lived exactly the same life as I have lived, they would still be a different person because their perspective, their interception would be different than mine. So definitely.
Yeah. So I'm curious with regards to like now with, and I know CA can be such a debilitating experience because there's so much time and effort that you put into it.
Yeah.
I'm not a CA, but Vivek is a CA. I know the effort he put into my partner's a CA. I've seen what it did to her for years on end.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that can be very debilitating. So at what point do you make the decision to say, okay, I've invested so much time in this, but it's not working out. I could be doing something else with the time that I'm doing and still be productive and find a different avenue of life. And I think for you was going back to teaching at Mewar University
Yeah.
after. And so what was that journey like from switching back, going back from Bombay back home for some time? What were some of the events that led to that move?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and that actually that would actually unnails like a lot of other things also. So, the society we usually come from, like Rajasthan, Jain, Marwaris, we girls are sometimes asked to marry like really early, let's say 22, 23. Again, that by no means I'm saying that my family had that, not at all. So my dad asked early on, like, when is that you would want to get married? And I was like, whenever I would want, I would actually come and tell you. And my dad, my mom was like, okay, finish your education and then. tell us whenever you want to. So I think at that time when went back to teaching was at that time I was like, I think I've given enough time to CA. I've been away from family for almost 10 to 12 years now. I haven't lived with them at all, and one point or the other I'm going to get married and like, just going to move away again. So I probably just want to stay with them for a bit. And then that's when that happened, that I came back and I was like, oh, I'm just going to. And then probably at that time my grandmother was not well. I was like, oh, I want to be with her as well for a bit. So I think all of those things where I was like, I was realizing I'm giving in a lot of time to like my own career, my own profession, my own life that I've built outside my hometown. And then I'm not getting to live with my younger brother as much. I'm not getting to live with my parents as much. And then marriage was always like a thing that, oh, this is going to happen sooner or later. So I want to stay with them. But again, when you come from a bigger city, like you said, when you come from a bigger city to a smaller place, and that too after 10 years, there is no way you can actually just sit and like wait for things to happen, right? I did that for a month. And the next month I went to my dad and I was like, there has to be something I need to do. Like, I just cannot,
Yeah.
right? And that's where Mewar University came into picture. It's a regional university around in my area. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And his words, okay, not mine, his words. I would give you this much money, just sit at home. Don't.
Hmm.
Whatever salary they were giving, right? Because he's like, nobody works at that salary and it's a smaller place, right? And he's like, you are and you would be earning so much more, back in Mumbai. Don't do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I really want to. And that's when the whole idea of teaching, the whole idea of giving back to the community, the whole idea of who I am now actually started.
Teaching can be a very difficult experience, especially if depending on the age bracket. Because especially if you're a new teacher and students sense some sort of hesitancy, that can
Mhm.
can really jump on it and make it a very difficult time for you. How did you navigate that those early days?
And when you were asking, I'm actually smiling thinking about all those experiences that I had. A lot of my students were actually my age as well. I was teaching MBA
Hmm.
students there. A lot of them are my age. As soon as you see a girl up on the podium or like on the stage, they're like, "Array," and then like
Hmm.
hundred that happen. Chalks come flying out of nowhere. Of course, they're like, if you're wearing a dress which is not like fan appropriate, they would turn on all the possible fans, and they're like, "Oh, this is what it's gonna happen." I mean, very small things, right? They'll start
Hmm.
throwing things at you, but I think I had an upper hand because I was like, I was not scared of anything. There was nothing to lose. I was like, what
Yeah.
will I lose? I'm here to teach them, and this is part of their teaching, right?
Hmm.
So what I'll do is actually, as soon as I'll enter the class, I'll turn on all the fans, and I'll give them all the chalks. And I was like, do you want to keep it? Keep it because you guys are going to need it for the 60 minutes. I'm going to lock the door from inside. No one's going out.
Hmm.
And then because I have a good command in the regional language, which is Marwari and Mewari. So I would actually yell at them in that language, and there they understood that whatever we do with her, she's not going to crack.
Hmm.
I've done that, where I was like, okay, will just sit and you all just throw chalk at me, and I'm fine by that. Do it. For how long are you guys can do it? And then I was not scared because I think I've already experienced a lot more than that. And I knew that these are just some scared, insecure kids. They're not even trying to, they were actually not trying to, do anything to me. They were just trying to safeguard themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They all wanted to study. They all have been probably forced to be here by families.
Yeah.
And then most of the kids were from a very like underprivileged economic background. And for me, I knew how important it is for them to study. Within a year, I think that things changed so much. Not even within a year, maybe like within a couple of months, things changed so much that everybody knew like no phones in my class. Of course, chalks stopped. A lot of other things stopped. They started coming to me for counseling, for conversation. I started speaking to parents about how education is important and all of that because I think I had that resilience in my mind that I've been there. I've been that brat. I just got the right direction from my family that how important the education is, and I probably need to speak their language to make them understand. And to find their language probably was the most difficult. But because I was from the same area, I've seen those conversations, I've heard those conversations. I think it was easy to navigate that with.
I have a question. I have a comment and then a question. The
Yes.
comment is, and it's something you said earlier, right? You mentioned how arguably CA was maybe not your dream, but a
Hmm.
parent's dream, right? And it's interesting. This is not the first time, Abhin, that we've had a guest on this podcast who's had the same story. If you remember from a few episodes ago, there was I think Sudarshan. He had the
Hmm.
same experience where he did CA, in fact, because that was that was the deal he made with his parents, and then he went on to do what he loved, right? And it just made me realize that I don't know if India is one of the few countries culturally where this happens, where the it's a combination of the kids try to live the parents' dream and the parents try to enforce their dream onto the kid. But either way, that that mutual relationship is interesting, and I don't know if it happens in the US as much. It's a thought, I don't know, but I know it definitely is a very strong force in India. But so that was my comment.
Mm-hmm.
My question was, I mean, this was the time where you decided to be a teacher, a lecturer, a helper of people. This was a challenging time, clearly, right? And some of the stories you just articulated suggest that it was a very challenging time. It also feels like, it also feels like your resilience, and you use the word resilience, it was also the resilience as the person that you have, that kind of made you go through it.
Yeah.
But was there something more? Because it feels like, at least from what I'm hearing, and seeing your story there on and what you went on to do, it
Yeah.
feels like there was something where this was not just resilience but also you being in your element. So at what point, my question is, at what point did you find that, hey, this is not just my resilience, but this is something that I truly, truly love? How did you make that switch? And if you even made that switch?
Right. And I think that's a very, very good question because, or, that's a very good discussion because I think when I joined, I honestly joined for the idea that I don't want to be in a CA firm because that was always an opportunity. It's a small place. My dad would have probably just called someone and I would have got a job there. But I didn't want that one. So I didn't want to use his name. Second, I actually and I loved public speaking. We both sisters were like great with debates and like public speakers. We've hosted events. I've always been like, that person who would take up the mic and just start speaking, hosted multiple events in the school. So I know that's something that I could do. But then also when I came back and I started having conversation with these people, I realized I was sitting on a pot of gold when it comes to resources. I know things, I have learned things, I have had experiences these guys would probably never have. So I was like, why do I not share it with them? I always say like I'm extremely privileged when it comes to education, when it comes to family, when it comes to how my life actually kept on drafting itself. I wouldn't even say I drafted my life. It kept on drafting itself because coming back to my hometown, I could have actually been very busy, like taking care of my family, taking care of my grandmother. But my mom specifically is like, you gotta do something. What are you doing tomorrow? Every night she would ask us, what are you doing tomorrow? And we're like, we'll see tomorrow. Like, no, you need to have a plan today. So I think we always wanted to understand what are we doing tomorrow. So I think when I started, this Mewar University and I started the lecturership, I understood I love this. When somebody comes to me with a question and I solve it, work or otherwise, it made me extremely happy. It made me, oh, I'm sharing the gift I have through life and otherwise. So I was like, why am I not doing it? Why am I not teaching them social etiquettes? Why am I not teaching them how education is important? Why am I not teaching them that, you should not be standing with your hands in your pockets when you're talking to someone? It's as small as that. Nobody would actually ever tell them that. And then from there, I realized that if I've been given something from the world, what is keeping me from sharing it to other people? Why am I keeping it? It's not mine to keep. And from there, I think that shift from like me being just a lecturer to an actual teacher to actually a coach happened. For then, I think I forgot about the numbers I was getting. I forgot about that I was there 9 to 6 every day. And then I was still getting morning and evening with my family. I think for me, it became like I was such a happy soul. I was a very happy soul during those times.
That's amazing.
So I'm curious now you moved from Chittorgarh to Seattle and there's an MBA. Like, so what led to all of that happening? Why the US and why specifically Seattle?
Oh wow! Listen,
Mm.
once somebody gets married, they don't get to make a lot of decisions. So I was that girl who was like, oh, parents are wanting you to get married, and unfortunately, all the rishtas I got in the arranged marriage
Mm.
were from outside India, and then I didn't want that. My sister, according to us, my sister was already living far. She was in Mumbai from Rajasthan. It is like a whole, overnight journey. We were like, oh, we're not doing that. So I want to be married somewhere closer. But then we waited for a year, and that during that time the lectureship was happening. I was happy, but these my folks, of course, were like, "Why is she not getting married? What's happening?" And if you've been in a normal Indian family conversation about a girl's marriage, you would see how stressful it is. Right? It is extremely stressful, especially if it's an arranged marriage. And so all of this was happening, and I think then this came up. And everybody asked me like what made me say yes within the first 40 minutes of conversation. So we both said yes in the first 40 minutes of conversation. And I think because I did not see any red flag. That was my standard. Oh, I'm not seeing any red flag. We can laugh together and I think it'll be fine. And then we'll just take it up as and when. So that happened. So I was in LA for a year because this guy was in LA for a year. And then we moved to Seattle because this guy changed his job. And I keep on saying this guy, I like that. But then he changed his job. And then we moved to Seattle together. But then also, I wanted to be in the Seattle University. So when he took up the job, it made more sense to just be here, do my MBA, and then him, of course, doing his job.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. So Seattle. So you ended up in Seattle. I mean, it
Such
was.
contrasting climates, guys. Like
Yeah.
for Rajasthan.
Yeah, Rajasthan to Mumbai to Seattle. That's great. I mean, that's I mean,
Hmm.
I guess it's good in a way that you did the move from Rajasthan to Mumbai because your parents kind of got used to you not being around, and maybe this move was easier on them, and I'm sure it was hard on you because I mean it's never easy moving to the US, right? That's always challenging,
Not at all.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
so I mean, I think you and I did speak about this earlier, but I mean, you moved to the US. Obviously, you came because you got married, so you were a dependent and in multiple ways, right? You were dependent on your husband for so many different things when you moved
Oof.
here.
Yeah.
How did that shape your thinking, your actions as an immigrant, as a partner, as a person?
Oh wow, that's a very deep question because then I will go to places that we probably do not want to explore first. But I think that did change me in a lot of sense. And going back to your comment of like how my parents feel about it, I think they're not still after 8 years of me being in US accustomed to the idea that I'm this far, and they'll keep on saying, "Arey, you'll come back soon. Don't worry about it." My mom's dialogue, "Arey, aa jaoge abhi tum India, kuch farak nahi padta hai," because they keep on telling it to themselves that it's fine. You're only this many hours a week, kind of. So I don't think they've made peace with it. And I don't think they ever will. I honestly don't think that because they think Mumbai was still approachable. My mom would visit me once in 3 months if I would not be able to. And here it's like 3 years in COVID, a year almost every year we don't get to go. So it's difficult for them still. But okay, me coming as a dependent, yes, I'm just thinking what was one independent thing? I don't think anything. I was financially dependent in the beginning. I was emotionally dependent, socially dependent. I didn't have my own identity in a sense that everybody honestly just knew me as his wife in the beginning. And for me, someone who's been an extrovert, who has been loud about her presence in the room, for me it was extremely difficult in the beginning, of course. But I think because I've moved places, I've made new friends all the time. For me, it just looked like, oh, it's a new phase, and I'm gonna just enjoy it, right? Because I said yes to it, and it is happening now. So first 6 months, I think I cooked as much as I didn't cook my whole life because I was like, what else to do? I watched, and I was being that good wife. Okay, 3 meals, everything hot on the table, reading, cleaning the house, making sure everything is as per my standards of what a wife should do, probably. But then also there came a time where I was like, I'm not moving. I'm exactly where I am a month ago,
Yeah.
or I'm exactly where I am where I act when I move to this country. So I think I took it up on myself in terms of I started watching a lot of television. I enrolled in a couple of classes. I of course by then had my driving license because I think this guy's like specific, very specific about like you need to do some things on your own and then you need to be dependent about some things. But then that happened, and then while I was thinking about like doing my MBA and all of those, we of course had multiple conversations about me doing a tech degree so that we can have a stable life, income,
Hmm.
and visa. And me being me, someone gave me a plan A. So you guys know now I wanted a plan B because there is no way I would take the plan A, right? Um, but I think it changed me in a lot of sense. You know why? Because my family had never given me an idea that how you need to be emotionally, financially, and socially dependent, independent. Because we've been like really close with each other in terms of everything, right? in a good and a bad sense.
Yeah.
So when I came here, I found myself like emotionally kind of all alone. Financially, I was dependent on someone which I've never been. And then in a sense where I don't have to tell and ask. Back in India, I didn't have to tell and I didn't have to ask for it. When I came here, there was a tell and ask. There was like, what's happening kind of conversations. And then, of course, I was socially dependent. So
Yeah.
I think it changed the whole of who I am. And I started spending a lot of time with myself, a lot of time with television, and like I said, a lot of time cooking. And then I started inviting people a lot. And then whosoever I would meet, honestly, I would be kind of best friends with them. I was like, I'm not going to leave your side because you're the only person outside of my, husband and his friends that I know. I'm
Yeah.
going to hold on to them. And I still have them as my friends. Like they are best of my friends that I've met in LA. We meet with their spouses. They have become our best friends. So what I'm trying to tell you is I've always seen changes in my life. It's just how I've allowed it within myself because I really wanted it. And in the beginning, it was difficult because I was like, why did I do that to myself? I had a life in India. Like, why would I do this?
Yeah.
And then I realized that this has happened. This is good exposure. And I think from there, life started taking a lot of changes.
I think when a situation like that happens, where suddenly so much of your control is dependent on the situation, or in cases when you get married to somebody, on someone else, and for so long you've had control of your own narrative, it really forces you to sit down and think through your thoughts and confront your thoughts and really make you start to plan a way forward for yourself. And
Yeah.
it's not something that happens overnight. Some cases, yes, that might happen to people overnight, but this is repeat. You go through like a tough phase in your life, or just generally where you're questioning what the next step is. There are a lot of avenues you can explore, a lot of introspecting that you can do, and that ultimately, with the right amount of time and effort that you put in, I feel like you find yourself moving in the right direction, which I think for you was, after having pursued the MBA, you
Mm.
started working as a career coach,
Yeah.
and as a recruiter in some really big organizations. I
Yeah.
think Uber, TikTok, and Amazon. So you decided to do something different at the time.
Mm.
So what was, I mean, like, what led you to take that decision?
Yeah. So when I started with my MBA, I think I realized that I had this loud voice in the room. Like I said, I've always had that. Not to, not to make someone feel bad about my presence, but then this is how I'm feeling and I'm going to say it out loud, right? And I realized in my class there were a lot of people, because of either communication, confidence, language, whatever, they would actually not share their opinions. And then they would write it either in a project paper, or they would start, discussing it with a team, and a team member would start sharing it. And then I realized that I'm so privileged, I'm gifted in a sense that I had this resource of I can be vocal, and it's a resource. Not
Yeah.
everybody has that. I has this resource of language, words,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, why am I not using it? So that's when one other person from my MBA and we kind of started a company. It's called Career. At that time it called Career Light. She started it. I became a part of it, and at that time we started that immigrant coaching, and it was honestly, it didn't have an idea of like what it is, but we started with communication, confidence, interview, and all of those things together. So from my MBA journey only, I started doing this coaching. But at that time, it was very limited to Seattle University within those areas, because I still wanted to talk to other immigrants, understand what are their challenges, and then make them understand mine, get answers, of course. And then through that process, I realized, oh, we can share. We can create a community of our own, and and share whatever we have with each other. So I think when pandemic hit, and then when we all were thinking like, who am I going to be? Once I do my MBA, I think before that only I decided I want to be a coach, and I wanted to do something in this because, like I said, everybody wanted me to go into IT. For multiple reasons, and I don't blame them, right? Because the market is like that. US overall is all about tech people. So they were like, do it, and I was like, I don't think I can do it. I'm going to take a longer, tougher route, but I'm still going to land to coaching somehow. So that's the reason I took recruiting, because I was like, oh, I'm on this side. I'm receiving all these feedbacks as an interviewee. What happens if I become an interviewer?
Yeah.
And that was the
Hmm.
idea of taking up leadership courses. My first course in Seattle University was an emotional quotient, like EQ, emotional intelligence. I don't think before that I even had an understanding. I just thought I'm a great person, I'm a great listener, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think I understood what that was. And that made me cry, that made me smile. That's still one of my most favorite courses. If you guys have never taken that, I mean, try taking it.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
it is. It's a strength, and I always say vulnerability is a strength, and that you can't. A lot of people think even today it's a weakness, and I always say no, it's not a strength. Especially there's stereotypes around gender, or men can't cry. I hear this time and time again. I hear it often. I hear it even now with 2024 now. I hear it now, but I absolutely agree. Vulnerability is one of the biggest strengths out there.
Right. And
Yeah,
then I think when I got to do all of these again, right, when you allow experiences within yourself, you change as a person. And I think from there, I understood that there's so much more I can offer to the world. And I can only offer if I understand who I am. So from there, a lot of things changed from my MBA and then the coaching and the recruiting and all of those start. I think I was really blessed, and I would really say that out loud. And I know there's nothing like being lucky, but I think I was really blessed that I got to work with these companies because I know a lot of talented people still don't get it. Like people who are in fact more talented, has more knowledge than me, they still don't get it. I got all of these opportunities, and I took them. And I, even if it was at that moment felt like not right, I was like, I'm just going to do it, and I'm just going to do it with all my heart, and then see where it takes us.
yeah. You spoke about community, right? And
Yeah.
I find it interesting. You said that, you're trying to create a sense of community for the immigrants, in addition to obviously the coaching and learning and growing. Do you feel like that's something that came out of your own personal experience? You mentioned that when you moved here, obviously it was something you struggled with um, yourself, right? So was that kind of a stepping stone towards this direction? Because it feels like this is like a culmination of everything. It's a culmination of right from your days in Rajasthan, right when you went back after Mumbai, when you decided to help and be in that space where you can actually coach and help,
Yeah.
and your experience in the US when you first moved to Seattle, and finding your own element here, finding your own identity here, and I feel like it all built up towards this one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I've said that out loud for like LA, Seattle, everywhere. If I'm going somewhere and if I'm not finding somebody, I can be that somebody. Right. So I think when I came to LA, I couldn't find that somebody who would speak to me about an experiences of being on an H4 and experiences of being of someone who cannot order their own coffee in the first week in US. Because again, I knew the language, I had the confidence, but then the imposter syndrome actually kicks in when you see everybody else being like out there and you just trying to be nice and this quiet girl in the room.
Yeah,
So I think I wanted to be that North Star for everybody else that I couldn't find for myself. So I think you were absolutely right on that point that all my experiences in terms of where I have moved to different places and I couldn't find that North Star really helped me creating this one. Because now still like I every month I have two pro bono clients because I know how difficult it is to be on H4 and ask money from your spouse, or how difficult it is to be on F1 and ask money from your parents and be like, oh, you have a 25 lakh loan. That's fine. Take a couple of more and then, give it to me for coaching because yeah, like, because the market is like that. And for parents, it's very difficult to understand that you have a degree, you know everything, why you're not finding a job, it must be your fault, right? So I still do that because I understand if I'm saying this, I'm preaching this, I need to practice this as
yeah,
well. So yes, a lot of that through my experience, and whenever I meet somebody, I make sure that they just see the very authentic side of me. And Vivek, you and I've had a conversation before this. Whenever we were speaking, I was not trying to be anybody else but just me. If I'm wearing a sweater that says I'm a delight, then I know there's a very professional product that's going to go out there. But this is who I am. This is what I feel like wearing. One of my sweat tees actually says kind of sleepy, kind of hungry, kind of both. And I wore it to one of my meetings with one of my mentors, and they're like, "Is this what you're feeling right now?" I was like, "This is what I was feeling when I wore it. Maybe not after meeting you, right?" So what I'm saying that I like being authentic because that gives the other person space to be themselves. And that's where everything absolutely takes a turn for life.
absolutely. No, I agree completely. Um, I mean, we obviously the work that you do in recruiting in tech is very powerful because you are actually creating tremendous value for these companies, as well as you're primarily hiring you're primarily hiring people that you would also work with on this side of the house, which is great. I see the value proposition that you're bringing. It's amazing.
Mhm.
Um, can you share some of the instances of the kind of work that you do with people specifically? And I'm not talking on the recruitment side. I'm talking more on the the coaching side,
Yeah.
and how you help them. I know you mentioned when when you and I were speaking before this that you kind of move towards more of a one-on-one
Hmm.
as opposed to a group session. I would
Yeah.
love to just hear about some of the work you have done and how you've helped people around you, and just anything you want to share about your journey there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I yes, I work with more one-to-one clients directly because I think everybody's journey is different, and I cannot have a blanket approach. And I don't think I make money off blanket approach, and I don't want to make money off blanket approach. Second is it's extremely important for me for my client to be very comfortable sharing about their real life challenges rather than just trying to match up with the other person in the room. So I like having that first conversation with them. What are their actual challenges? Job not finding the job is one thing, yes, but what do you think? What are the challenges? Is it the communication? Is it the confidence? Is it the imposter syndrome? Is it the networking? Is it your resume? Is it your LinkedIn? Is it you just being out there, way too out there? Or is it just like your interview and storytelling skills, right? So I work with them on all of these exclusive pieces, but there's so many times that I'm also like a counselor to them without a degree, without any strong tools and strategies, because sometimes these people just want someone to hear them, and they just want to lay it out there that it's not their fault that they're not getting the job. And parents can't understand that for all the obvious reasons. They're not here, they don't know the market. Most of our at least from the places I come from, most of the parents don't understand the market, the economy, the
Yeah,
society. They would just blame you like, you've done such a big degree in such a big country, how are you not getting a role, right?
yeah, yeah,
So I think to just hear them out is what makes them um, makes them comfortable to take the next step and the realization that they really need this coaching. So I start with a conversation in terms of who they are and what can we do together. Again, in terms of, is it communication, is it the confidence, is it, do you just need a community, then my community is open for you, then you don't need to pay anything at all. Or is it the resume, because a lot of people have done great work and then they think they need to put everything, and there's a 7-page resume which a recruiter like me would never read. It's like there is no way I can have like a 7-page resume in 30 seconds.
yeah,
And unfortunately, that's all what recruiters usually have in the back end, right? Because it's unfair on the other people that we don't get to see. Like if I don't get to see hundreds resumes, then it's unfair on those 100 people because I was busy reading 7 pages of someone else's resume, right? So we work on that, and the biggest piece is storytelling. And I work with a lot of immigrants because we've been asked, we've been taught, we've been pressurized to be extremely modest. So we forget that we need to glorify our work. We need to be out loud there in the room is like, I did it, I did a great job, and I learned from this.
yeah,
For us, it's a big deal. And I've seen everybody else making noise around other than us. And when I say us, a lot of immigrants, yes. So I like working with people. I've had 11, I've wrapped up few, but I've had 11 clients in January. 60% of them were women. And I love working with women because then I can relate with the stories. There's a mother who is coming back to work after 6 years of gap. There is a there's a woman who wanted to take up something big, but she didn't because of family responsibilities. Now she feels like, after all these years of experience, she's not getting what she wants. So we're working with her. I recently worked with a guy who did his graduation, got laid off, and now we're working with him because he's like, I can do so much more, and I have this huge loan to pay. What do I do?
yeah,
And now that has taken a confidence hit because he's like, yesterday I was working in such a big tech company, and now I'm literally a nobody, and I can't even tell my parents for all the obvious reasons. Um, so I think I like that all of my clients are not very traditional clients of like, hey, I want a job, everything else is sorted in my life, because I don't think that's true for most of our lives. So yeah, okay, I went
Awesome.
on 1500 minutes. It feels like, sorry,
No,
you were.
no, no problem. No,
no,
I
that
like
was
that.
great.
Yeah, because given the current economy, given the amount of people being laid off, especially immigrants who their entire life is dependent on visas, right? So even for them, I was reading an article recently about how like there are so many tech employees who from big tech companies who've been laid off,
Yeah.
and who've come back to India or to wherever, whichever country they've been, and they find difficulty, and it's very difficult for them to get hired because companies view them as a threat that they will end up leaving if another job from the US comes calling. One, obviously, they need to take a huge pay cut in terms of salary because what you make in the US is a far, far different figure compared to what you'd make in India.
So true.
But at the same time, it's not even that. It's just that they view you. The number is the last thing they look at on the resume. They look at your experience. They think, oh, this person is way too qualified for the roles. We'll have to pay them a little more, as opposed to just training somebody
Yeah.
locally and then having them on a lesser salary, while ensuring that they stay loyal.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult time because obviously there are huge financial commitments for the person who put all that money and effort to move to a different country to start a new life. It's a huge gamble, and and people who've now made moves to universities and are still struggling to find roles for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a very, we've spoken about this on previous episodes. It can be a very debilitating experience. Your confidence takes a massive hit. I've been there myself. I understand what people go through.
Yeah.
So to have someone guide you through that storm is essential at this point, because you lose yourself in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, when you have a community or when you have somebody to speak with, it also it also validates what you're feeling, right? Because sometimes to even take the next step, that validation and realization is extremely important. And then you're like, oh, I'm dusting it all now and I'm taking the next step. So to dust it all, somebody needs to kind of validate that you're sad, you're upset, you're angry. All of that is absolute. You need to acknowledge it. Somebody needs to acknowledge it, right?
Yeah.
And if everybody around you is in that race of like, oh, you just need to find something, please update your resume, start applying, and no one's taking a minute to actually sit with you and feel it with you that, oh, this has happened. You have to think about your, your taxes. You have to think about your insurance. You have to think about everything else because people are like, be practical. You only have this much time. You got to think, and then I feel like then I come in the picture and I was like, okay, let's break it. Sit. Let's just break it. Let's just have a conversation around that first,
Yeah.
which which is required. We don't do that enough. And I understand 60 days are not enough. Like, nobody wants to waste an hour like sitting and having a conversation. But clients who've had that conversation understand how important it is to draft that next step and then next step from there.
Yeah.
And coming back to your point is, I've had friends who've gone back because of multiple reasons. And it's not just the professional, the money terms, it's also difficult to set back into that culture and then to be, and I'm going to say it out loud, to be like, to be living with the family again, because now you kind of are a different person than who you were when you were traveling to US or when you were thinking of moving, right? So there's also that piece of adjustment. So yes, financially you're adjusting, but also mentally, physically also you're adjusting a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And for me, the one thing that you said that stood out, and this is something actually you also highlighted as the most important thing, is storytelling, right? And it's something that, generally speaking, Indians are not good at. And it's, and rightly you rightly said why, right? That I think, you said the cultural thing that we're not culturally, we're not very good at tooting our own horn. And I think it's also, maybe an educational thing, right? A lot of engineers typically, we're used to looking at a very structural, a logical problem and a logical solution, like A equals B. But storytelling is more like you add context, you add flavor, you kind of you kind of build it up. So I think that's a skill that, that immigrants maybe don't naturally have, which is a great, it's a great value that you're adding there. The last question I have, and unless Abin has another question, but I think this is the last question,
Mhm.
is, so there are a couple of parts to this question, right? So the first part is, there are actually three parts to this question, so it's going to be
Okay.
a long question. So
Mhm.
part one is, obviously, people listening, immigrants listening, and they want to reach you, right? So how does one do that? That's question one.
Okay.
The second part is, obviously you have so much experience as a recruiter, and you spoke about storytelling, but what are some of the things you look for in not an immigrant, but in a resume? How do you kind of dissect a resume in terms of, if someone's just listening right now and they're looking to apply for a tech job or looking to apply for a job, what should they be thinking about as they look at the resume? That's part two.
Hmm.
And part three, which is a more generic question, is, what is your biggest learning as an immigrant?
Okay, so I was taking notes because there are three questions, and that is what I always tell my clients to do: is like take notes when someone's asking more than one question, so you do not forget a question, and the recruiter doesn't have to ask it again. So first question: how does anybody reach me? So all my handles, social media handles, are Coach Shreya Mehta. On LinkedIn as well, you'll find me on Coach Shreya Mehta. On Instagram, you'll find me on Coach Shreya Mehta. My website is coachshreyamehta.com. So that's how they're going to find me, and I'm pretty sure like you're just going to tag me somewhere so they can find
We
me from
will.
there as
Yeah.
well.
Of course,
But
yeah,
yes, all my handles are Coach Shreya Mehta. To the second question, what do I look in a resume? Of course, depends on a role. If I'm looking at a product manager, I'll be looking at the roadmap. If I'm looking at a salesperson, I'm looking at the communication, collaboration, stakeholder partnerships, and all of those. If I'm looking at a software engineer, I'm looking at the tools, I'm looking at the projects that they've been a part of. But then, most important things I'll be looking at: one, the keywords related to the roles. So, what skills do they have? Do they have the tools that we want them to be working on? Or have they worked with multiple tools and can they learn a new tool? So keywords definitely. A piece of advice here: do not overdo keywords on your resume, please, because then it really looks like you've either copied it from the new thing, which is ChatGPT, or you've actually taken up all the keywords from the job description and actually put it there. Don't do that. Still remember, a human is reading it, and a human would know if a human has not made the resume. Is what I actually tell my clients. Second would be AI, but my version of AI, which is action and impact. All the resumes should have action, and should have impact. So collaborated with people. Okay, what did you do after collaborating? Like what happens? What would have happened if you didn't collaborate? So AI, which is action and impact, needs to be there on your resume. Third, it cannot be 7 pages. I'm not going to read it. I'm sorry, you would not get the job. So it needs to be maybe 2 pages. If you have like so much to tell, 2 pages still acceptable. Anything more than that, it's just noise for me. And then there cannot be format, font, and all of those errors. It needs to look very pretty, because again, if I'm reading 100 resumes a day, and if I see something which is very irritating to my eyes, I'm probably going to come back to it later and then not read it right then and there. And again, I'm only speaking for myself. By no means I'm saying that all recruiters do it. Some are very nice, some are in a good mood. They'll probably read it. If I'm not in a good mood, I'll probably not read it. And unfortunately, that's true. I have hundreds of those, and I have a hiring manager who wants to fill the role, and I have a team who wants their engineer to start working on the project, right? So probably I'm not thinking just about a candidate. I'm thinking about the whole other
Yeah.
set of stakeholders that I have.
Yeah.
So those were the two questions. The third one was learning. Note making did help, didn't it? The
yeah.
third question is learning, right? So I think as an immigrant, in fact, like I said, I was an immigrant in India also. Now I think as a new person in a new place, I would say be ready for changes. Sit with it. Do not force your mind, do not force your body to be okay with the change. Sit with it. Tell yourself what's changing and how that's affecting you. And I'm not talking about like, big meditation piece, or like, oh, I'm talking spiritual. I'm not. I'm just saying that speak to yourself that there are changes that's affecting you, how, and how good it is for you. Because all the changes that I adapted honestly has been good for me. I'm not saying that I wouldn't have been a coach if I was in India,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying that I think from here I get a lot more opportunities. Because if I would have been in India, I don't think I would have been coaching immigrants, right? I still coach in India, of course. Like last year I went to India for a couple of months. I was there, I did multiple workshops. I got paid for mostly none, because I was like, just giving back to the community. Why am I doing this, right? I learned from here, I'm giving it back to them. What's the big deal? And I do that. But if you are ready for that change, um, I mean, life would, has a lot more to offer. But then just don't force the change on yourself.
Yeah.
Sit with it, allow yourself to feel it, and then, live it. Yeah,
Awesome.
I like that.
Wow, that was a great episode. For me, I mean, I thank you for joining us. It was
Yeah.
amazing for me because I was thinking, as you were speaking, there was so much I always take every time I have an interaction with an amazing guest, and you are an amazing guest, a delightful guest.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. I think the biggest, there are so many takeaways for me. The biggest takeaway is, I see that you were stuck quite a few times in your life, and you have found a way to grow out of that, right? Whether you were in Bombay, with your chartered accountancy, whether you were in Rajasthan, whether you when you came to Seattle, right? In every aspect of your life, you were stuck, but you found a way to grow. It looks like you did it through resilience, through conviction, through confidence, and of course being vulnerable, like you said. I think these are some of the main cornerstones to achieving the success that you did. So it was a great reinforcement for me, great learning. It gives me a lot to think about in my own life. uh, you know we've all been stuck as immigrants. Sometimes we feel more stuck than otherwise. So it was a great reminder to me. So thank you personally. It was a super reminder. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And then when you were saying all of this, I really have to say it out loud. I honestly couldn't have done it if my mom and dad, my brother and sister wouldn't keep on reminding me. And then they call me, um, Tu mera sher bacha hai. That's what they call me. So if I'm like sad, if I'm crying, and that's what my dad keeps on saying it, because I think from the childhood they had this narration, oh, she's a second daughter, what's going to happen, kind of. And then my dad from there had this that, oh, she's a second daughter, she's going to be the share of the house, kind of. So I've always had that. And once I came here, I think this guy, because that's what we're calling him in this podcast. So
Hmm.
this guy became like a great strength, because he's like, you are a person. Why do you have to be dependent on anybody, financially or emotionally, whatever? And I'm glad, because he's from a completely different household than I am. He's been brought up differently. So he's very emotionally, financially very independent. He doesn't need like hundreds of people around me like I do. So I think we're like a good combination like that. So he's taught me a lot about how you need to be emotionally independent, how you need to be financially independent, and then only we can make a team. Like if you'll be dependent on me about everything, it's just going to be a lot of load on me. And I think so when it comes from family, you are given again that space to be vulnerable, right? Like my sister has given me that space. My brother has given me that confidence that because he's living with my parents, or like, he's taking care of my parents, I don't have to worry about anything. I can just build my life. Like imagine if this I would have been the only child, I would have been constantly worried about my parents, right? So I think everybody has put in something, and then I have just embraced it probably.
I'm glad you came on. It was such a fun conversation. It was a very interesting journey. So many changes. So, like Vivek mentioned, so many changes. So much has happened. So many points where anyone would sit and question themselves. But the ability to just move past it, to understand that this is the reality of the situation, embrace it, move past it, and move on to better things, and become the person who you are today is a testament to just how strong your character is.
Yeah.
Uh, a true shared bacha, as your parents would say.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I really want to say, because we did talk about authenticity and vulnerability. I have cried. I cry almost every day, for multiple reasons. But I do. So there is no way that, oh, I have a solution to everything when I sit in meditation. No, I don't. Like I said, I allow myself to feel things and then take it to the next step. But yeah, I mean, by no ways, I know that we're just talking about like how great the life has been, but I know through challenges, and then you just got to sit with it, talk about it, take it, um, with open hands, open arms, whatever people say, and then just live with it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, challenges are a part of life. It's. I keep telling people I talk to that if you don't have challenges, then you're not going to enjoy the fruits of your labor at the end of it, right? That's the point.
Absolutely. If you are not getting challenges, I just tell my clients that if you're not challenged, that means you're there where you were yesterday. So you're not growing. If
Yeah.
you're not challenged today, you didn't learn anything new.
So I think this is as good a place as to end the conversation. Shreya, once again, thank you so much for coming on. We look
Absolutely.
forward to having you on future episodes. We will definitely be in touch at some point.
I would love that.
Uh, and that's us for this week's episode. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, take care. Have a good one and stay safe.